Okay. Now sampling is just a technique that we're going to use to do the work. Okay, it's just one of the techniques we're going to use to do the work. So again, I need to show you in which part of the audit that you might come across sampling. Now, when we start at the beginning, when we plan the audit, which procedure you're going to do here? Which category you're going to do? Yes, risk assessment. That's the start, correct? Now class, when you assess risk, see what you're doing in assessing risk is you're actually obtaining understanding. Alright? Okay, you're obtaining understanding. Now that's why you notice risk assessment is more like a fact-finding process. Again, a risk assessment is more like a fact-finding process. Like I want to assess your risk. What job do you do? You tell me, I work in office. Okay, office. So compare with another guy, what do you do? Oh, I work in construction site. Wow, construction site, high risk, dangerous. Anything fall down, you die. Okay. So example, see, I just ask question and you tell me. So what I'm doing is I'm just understanding your background. Now besides understanding about you, in risk assessment, there's also one procedure that we do it very specific to assess risk. Is called analytical procedure. Correct enough? Now, so we will do AP. Now, scared you forget, you better write full one. Analytical procedure. So how do you do AP again? How do you do AP? Remember the steps. Take financial statement, analyze the number, look at the fluctuation, then see which one is not, is abnormal, this is risky, normal, not risky. Now again, that's what you do. So do you notice that all these things that we do here, we cannot sample, okay? All these things that we do here, we cannot sample. Because if you want to sample something, what you need is the capability of quantifying them into unit. What is 1 unit, 2 unit, 3 unit? But you can't. It's all understanding. They're abstract one. You cannot sample. There's no numbers with it. So this is the first stage when you start the audit. Okay. So if you move on, now let's assume, okay, let's assume that you're going to use combine. Okay, let's assume you're going to use combine. That means you're going to perform EOC. Right? You're going to do EOC. Okay, so if you're going to do a test or control, so I just get an example. So let's say auditor will test authorization of PO by purchasing manager control. Very simple, authorization of PO by purchasing manager control. That means we want to see whether the purchasing manager actually authorizes the PO. That's it. Got authorized or been authorized. Got means effective, no means not effective. Is it not? Now, think of the logic. To know whether something is effective or not, you must have a threshold to divide between yes and no. Because you cannot expect things are perfect, right? In life, we are perfect. You don't even go exam and say perfect. Right? If I say you make 1 mark mistake, you fail ACCA, no, right? We still give you 50 marks of allowance. So that's why there's a threshold for us to measure what is called good or not good. So maybe I tell you that the threshold is, I allow 3%. That means if you got 1,000, I allow you to make 30 mistakes, then I can accept. So there must be a threshold for us to measure. Now all that we see later, okay? Now, so let's say in total, there were 20,000 PO issued. Okay, in total, there were 20,000 PO issued. And I will accept, let's say, a 3% deviation. Okay? So all these are examples that I simply write down here. Okay? So we're going to accept 3% deviation. Again, what is this point? Because we need to know control good or not good. That's why we have a threshold. The threshold is 3%. So what's 3% of 20,000? 600, right? Correct enough? That means if in total more than 600 of the PO got no authorization, I will say that your control is not working properly. Is it not? But then you think and see. If you want me to check all the 20,000, see whether you authorize the PO, to decide whether later I want to do how much the SP, I already checked everything here. Got logic or not? Might as well I take all my energy to check everything straight into the account. Why must I check everything now to decide later check again or not? That must be terribly crazy, right? So that's why the logic is I can't be checking every single thing to decide your control is good or not good, because we are talking about probability. We know that the same thing will happen again and again and again. So just look at the pattern, look at the probability. So I don't need to test everything, right? So maybe out of 20,000, I just need to choose a small bit, like maybe 150. So from the 200,000, so from the 20,000, probably I will only select 150. I'll take it up. And then I will inspect them for the manager's authorization. So if in the 150, I notice more than 3%, that means 4.5%. Okay? So it's either 4 or 5 PO. So if I notice 5 PO in the 150 was not authorized, then I will conclude your control is not working properly. Then I will know what to do later on in the SP. Or if I check the 150, I realize that only 2 not authorized, that means your deviation rate is below what I can accept or tolerate, then I will say your control is good. Then I will go on, keep with my plan. But what we're trying to tell you is, in this process, we have adopted a technique called audit sampling. Okay, so we are not interested with the test right now. Okay, we're not interested with the test right now. What we are interested in is the process of how we do the sampling. Understand? The process of how we do the sampling. Okay. So finishing this, we're going to move on to the next part. Now that's where we will perform substantive procedure. Okay, it's where we're going to perform substantive procedure. Now, what's the point or what's the use of SP over here? Do what? Is to detect material misstatement, right? Yes, very good. Okay, it's to check for error, in short. Here, we're going to check for error. That means this is the real objective of the audit now. Is about checking for the error. And to check for the error, remember we tell you we have 2 different types of procedure again. The SP can be divided into the test of detail as well as substantive analytical procedure. Am I right? Okay, we divide them into test of detail, substantive analytical procedure. Now the technique of doing analytical procedure here and here, they are more or less the same. You just need to come out with a relationship, use a formula, compare two results, see the fluctuation. Now that's why anything to do with AP, it's about looking at fluctuation and see whether relationship shows normal or abnormal relationship, and then see whether or not you want to investigate further. Now that's why at this stage you will not use sampling. Again, it's not appropriate. How to use sampling? You tell me. There's no sampling, right? It's just evaluating the relationship. So there's nothing here for us to sample. Okay. Now, here we look at test of detail. Alright? Now, to look at the test of detail, we are looking at checking the individual things. Okay? Checking the individual things. Now, of course, in audit, there's a lot of things we check. Alright? There's a lot of things we check. Okay, so I just put a simple one since we have not learned the procedure. So, just take example one. That we're going to look at all your sales invoices. Okay, we're going to take your sales invoices and we're going to check by tracing from this invoice going into your sales day book, let's say. Okay, from your sales invoices going to your sales day book. See whether you recorded them or not. Alright? From the invoice, go to sales day book and see whether you recorded them. Because logically, if there's an invoice, there must be a sales in the record. Okay, so again, you have 500,000 of invoices. Okay, there are 500,000 of invoices issued in the year. You tell me. If every piece of invoice, you're going to pick it up and go to the account and check. See whether the same amount has been recorded. 500,000 pieces. How long can you spend? And you just want to check this alone in audit, is it? No, right? There's so many things you're going to check, right? Can finish the audit? You can't, right? So what are you going to do? Sample. So that's why the logic is when your population size is too big, then you have no choice, you sample. Can you know? So this is an example again that we going to sample. So we probably will say like have a formula. Again, we're going to see detail later. Okay, have a formula and see how many invoices we're going to choose, probably based on the value, and then from there we'll check. Okay. Now, so again, a sample is being used. Now that's on the idea that there are 500,000 invoices. I tell you example. If let's say my business only issue 120 invoices for the whole year, 120 only, and you're going to do the same checking, will you start taking sampling? 120 calculate the sample, 120 take 20, then the rest don't bother. Now, but you think and see, now the idea of sampling is not logical already because the population is very small already. That you are able to check every single thing. Okay, so, that's why you see in the audit of small entity, why you never hear the issue like calculate sample size accessories, because they don't need. A lot of them, their business is so small. That's why the auditor just check everything. Can you not? So that's the idea. Follow now? Now you don't have to do that. So that's one example. You don't sample. Very small. Number two. I tell you that everything here you see, they are 100% computerized, automated. You don't even need to use your human to check. For example, you can just come up with an apps. Okay, come up with an apps. That apps is pre-programmed. That the computer will run through all the checking for you and see whether from there they posted everything. So that apps is pre-programmed, is written. So how to check? Very simple. Press a button. Check. Shoot. 2 seconds finish it. Because computer is very fast. Can you know? You don't do the work. Computer does the work. In that case, will you ask the computer to check 120 instead of 500,000? No, right? Since computer check everything. So what's the point of checking one part and not all? Because you don't do the work, understand? So that's why in this case, we start to realize that when we do tests of detail, there are cases that auditor will opt for 100% examination. Okay, there are cases that auditor will opt for 100% examination. So what's the 100% examinations cases? Now we take 3 examples for you just now. Okay, 2 examples for you just now. First of all, small population. Of course, with high value item. Okay, if the population is small and the value is small, it will become immaterial, then you wouldn't bother. Okay, so it's small yet the value is material, it's high value item. So very small that you don't mind that you go through all the checking. Okay. Number 2, if you can use IT so that there's a very efficient way that make it cost effective, that the checking is justified. Okay, what's the third way? Third situation. Okay. Now the third situation over here is we say, if you have no choice, even though you know checking every single thing is time consuming, but because there's just too many mistakes that you can't afford not to check all of it. Let's say imagine you check a very small sample, you take out 200 invoices. In 200 invoices, there are about 40 invoices already wrong. You take out another 200, another 30 over wrong. Wow, you take out another 200, another 20 over wrong. Wow, everything you take out, so many mistakes. Then you have a very good reason to believe substantially inside will be wrong already. Right? Then you tell me you still sample, is it? It doesn't make sense already. Right? Then you say, well, I better check all. Because this is a situation that the risks are just too high already. Can you see no? So that's an example of telling us why you're going to check all. Now that's why in the notes here we say that 100% examination can be considered. Okay? When you have this sort of situation, population that they are very small but very large value item, inherent control risks are very high. That means very high risk of so it's very risky. There's a lot of mistake that you've no choice but you're going to check through everything. And the third one is the repetitive nature of the calculation. The process performed by IT make it 100% checking cost effective. So we say you're going to use computer assisted audit technique. Right, so these are the situations that 100% checking will be opted. Follow up, okay? Right, so there's a start for an idea to show you that in the audit, throughout different stages, that where sampling will come in, okay? And what are those cases that we will not use sampling, okay? So all that is the first thing. Now we're going to see the detail of how sampling works later, okay? So let's just take a break, okay? We'll come back, then we'll continue this.